my husband said. My ex is coming to Christmas dinner with us. He smiled, but he had no idea what was coming next. Welcome to Struggling Stories, where real emotions meet hidden truths. Before we begin, tell us, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this story will make you question trust, love, and forgiveness. My name is Ninclara Bennett. I'm 34 years old, and I live in a small town called Maplewood, where everyone knows everyone, and secrets don't stay hidden for long. I'm married to Ethan Bennett, 36, a corporate manager who always walks into a room like he owns it. We've been married for 7 years and have a 6-year-old daughter, Lily, the sunshine of my world. On the surface, we look like the perfect family. A pretty house with red bricks, a white fence, fairy lights glowing around the window, and laughter echoing every evening. But like every picture-perfect frame, what you see is never the full story. It was just a week before Christmas when everything began to fall apart. I was decorating the Christmas tree that night, the scent of cinnamon candles filling the living room, soft music playing in the background. Lily was sitting on the carpet, wrapping a tiny present for her school teacher, while Ethan sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Then he suddenly said, "Clara, I have something to tell you. Please don't freak out." I turned to him with a smile, holding a silver ornament shaped like a snowflake. "What happened?" He looked at me for a moment and chuckled nervously. "My ex is coming to Christmas dinner with us." At first, I laughed. I thought he was joking, but the look on his face wasn't one of humor. It was hesitation. "Wait, what?" I asked. He repeated calmly, "Yeah, Sophie. My ex-girlfriend. She's back in town, doesn't have family around, and I thought, well, it'd be nice to invite her. It's Christmas after all." The room suddenly felt colder. I put the ornament down and walked closer. "You invited your ex to our Christmas dinner. Ethan, are you serious right now?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Clara, it's just dinner. Don't make it weird. She's been through a lot. I just wanted to be kind." Kind. That word echoed in my head like an insult. He wasn't kind when he forgot our anniversary. He wasn't kind when he worked late every night for deadlines that didn't exist. And now suddenly, kindness had a name. Sophie. I said nothing more, just smiled faintly and went back to decorating. But something inside me, something instinctive, whispered that this wasn't just about compassion. It was about connection, a connection he never truly let go of. That night, after putting Lily to bed, I couldn't sleep. Ethan was in the shower, humming. His phone was on the nightstand, glowing with a notification. My heart pounded as I picked it up. I knew it was wrong, but curiosity is a dangerous thing when love starts to doubt. I opened his messages. No text from Sophie, nothing suspicious. Then I checked his photo gallery. Buried between random work pictures and screenshots were photos that didn't belong, Sophie. Recent ones. Her standing in front of a cafe, her smiling in a park, her hand holding a small girl's. A girl who looked shockingly familiar. My hands trembled. I zoomed in on the child. Brown curls, soft. Blue eyes, the same blue as Ethan's. I felt my chest tighten as I realized what might be true. Could Ethan have another child? The thought was unbearable. I wanted to scream, to cry, to confront him, but instead, I placed his phone back, turned off the lamp, and pretended to be asleep when he came out. He kissed my forehead gently before lying beside me, the same forehead he'd kissed 1,000 times before. This time, it felt like a lie. The next morning, I acted normal, made breakfast, packed Lily's school bag, kissed Ethan goodbye as he left for work. But inside, I wasn't the same woman anymore. I was a storm waiting to break. That day, I searched for Sophie online. Her name popped up instantly. Sophie Martin, lifestyle photographer. Her social media was open, full of vibrant smiles, sunny beaches, and artistic photos. Then I saw her child again, a girl named Emma, 6 years old, born just months before Lily. My knees went weak. Could it be? I scrolled further down, looking for clues, and then found a photo posted 3 years ago. The caption read, "Some goodbyes are never really goodbye." And right below, one familiar name had liked the post. Ethan Bennett. I couldn't breathe. That night, I didn't confront him. Instead, I started watching him. The way he checked his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. The late night works, calls, the unexplained detours on his way home. It wasn't guilt in his eyes. It was fear. The kind of fear that only comes when someone knows their lie is about to collapse. So I decided to find Sophie. 2 days later, I called her. She was shocked to hear from me, but agreed to meet for a woman-to-woman talk. We met at a small cafe downtown. Snow was falling softly outside, people laughing over hot chocolate. The world unaware that two women inside were about to rewrite each other's lives. When she walked in, I recognized her instantly. Tall, confident, the kind of woman who always seemed sure of herself. "Clara," she said gently, sitting down. "I didn't expect you to call." I smiled. "Well, I didn't expect you to come to my Christmas dinner." Her expression froze. "He told you?" "Oh yes," I said. "He told me everything. Or at least, I think he told me the part he wanted me to know." She looked down. "Clara, please. It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" I asked quietly, because from where I stand, my husband has been seeing his ex, who conveniently has a daughter that looks just like him. Her eyes glistened. He didn't know. I never told him until recently. The cafe noise faded into nothing. "What did you say?" "I didn't tell him," she repeated. "When I found out I was pregnant, he was already moving on. I didn't want to destroy his life. But a few months ago, I told him the truth. He was shocked, Clara. Completely. He's been trying to help. Not because he loves me, but because he wants to do the right thing." For a moment, I just stared at her. Everything I thought I knew twisted into something else. Pain, betrayal, confusion, all mixed together. Then Sophie said softly, "Clara, he loves you. He always has. But he also wants to know his child." I swallowed hard. "And what do you want?" She smiled sadly. Peace. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I planned. Ethan wanted Sophie to join our Christmas dinner. Fine. She would, and she wouldn't come alone. I wanted him to face his truth. Not through words, but through reality. I called Sophie the next day. "If you're coming," I told her, "bring Emma with you. Let's make this Christmas honest." There was a long silence before she said, "Are you sure?" "Yes," I whispered. "He needs to see what lies can cost." The house was glowing with warmth. The smell of roasted turkey, laughter from Lily, and Christmas carols playing softly. Ethan looked happy, relaxed, like a man who thought the storm had passed. He held Lily in his arms and said, "You know, this might be the best Christmas yet." I smiled. "Oh, I'm sure it will be." The doorbell rang. Ethan frowned. That must be Sophie. When he opened the door, his smile froze. Sophie stood there, holding Emma's hand. For a second, time stopped. Lily gasped softly, "Mommy, she looks like me." The two little girls looked at each other. Same eyes, same curls, same smile, and giggled. Ethan turned pale, stepping back. "Clara, what is this?" I stood behind him, holding 2 glasses of wine. "Merry Christmas, Ethan," I said softly. "You said your ex was coming to dinner. You didn't mention you were bringing your past too." He stared at me, words choking in his throat. Sophie looked away, tears forming in her eyes. The music played on, cheerful and cruel at the same time. Lily and Emma were already playing near the tree, their laughter echoing through the house. And Ethan? He was frozen in a silence that said everything. That night, after everyone left, he tried to explain. I was going to tell you. Clara, I just didn't know how. I looked at him, not with anger, but exhaustion. You had years to tell me, but you chose lies instead of truth. He broke down. I didn't want to lose you. You already did, I whispered. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft, endless, and cold. And inside, I sat by the Christmas tree, watching the lights flicker against the glass. For the first time in years, I didn't feel broken. I felt awake, but I knew one thing. This story wasn't over. Because secrets don't end when you expose them. They begin again, in ways you never expect. Ethan invited his ex, Sophie, and her daughter Emma to Christmas dinner, but his wife Clara already knew the truth. The night ended in silence, tears, and a truth that could no longer be hidden. But every ending is also a beginning, and this beginning would test everything they ever believed about love, loyalty, and forgiveness. Christmas morning came quietly. Snow blanketed Maplewood like a secret. The streets were silent, and my house, for the first time, didn't smell like cinnamon or laughter. Ethan was gone. He'd packed a bag after the dinner and left, saying he needed time to think, but time doesn't heal lies. It just gives them space to grow. Lily woke up early, rubbing her eyes. Mommy, is Daddy coming for breakfast? I forced a smile. Maybe later, sweetheart. He's visiting a friend, she nodded innocently, and went back to playing with her new doll, the one Ethan had wrapped himself. I watched her small fingers brush the doll's hair and wondered how long it would take before she started asking real questions. That afternoon, Sophie called. I'm sorry for last night, she said softly. I didn't want it to happen that way. I did, I replied, my voice calm. He needed to face it. We all did, she sighed. He came by this morning to see Emma. My chest tightened. And, he cried, she said simply. Not for me, for her. There was a long pause between us, the kind that carries more meaning than any words. I don't want to ruin your marriage, Clara, Sophie whispered. I just want Emma to know her father. That's all. I closed my eyes, my fingers trembling. Then let him, but he won't do it on my terms anymore. He'll do it on hers. 3 days later, Ethan came back. It was late at night, and the snow was falling harder than ever. I heard the front door creak open and his slow footsteps across the floor. I didn't turn on the light. I just sat by the window, watching the snowflakes melt against the glass. Clara, he said softly, please don't shut me out. I didn't move. You already shut yourself out, Ethan. He sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. I made a mistake, a huge one, but I never cheated on you. I swear. I know, I said. But lies are their own form of cheating. He didn't reply. Then I turned to face him. Why didn't you tell me? You could have trusted me with the truth. His voice cracked. Because I was scared you'd see me differently, that you'd think everything we had was fake, was it? I asked. He stepped closer, his eyes glistening. No, I love you, Clara. I always have. I just didn't know how to carry both parts of my life without breaking one. I stood up slowly, the distance between us filled with everything unsaid. You already broke it, I whispered. Now you'll have to decide if you want to rebuild it, or walk away. The next weeks were strange. Ethan began visiting Emma on weekends, with my permission, though every time he left, something inside me ached. Lily didn't understand why Daddy had another little girl he spent time with, so I told her. Sometimes people make mistakes before they find what's right. It was the simplest truth I could offer. At night, I'd lie in bed, listening to the ticking clock, wondering if forgiveness was really possible, or just a fairy tale for broken hearts. Ethan tried, he called, he came home early, he cooked dinner, he talked about starting over, about therapy, about making things right. But love doesn't heal on promises. It heals on actions. One evening, I followed him again. Not because I doubted him, but because I needed to see if change was real. He drove to a small playground. Emma was there, swinging softly. Sophie, sitting nearby. He didn't touch Sophie, didn't even sit close. He just knelt beside Emma, talking to her, laughing, wiping snow from her coat. For a moment, I saw a man who wasn't hiding anymore, just trying to be a father. I stood there in the shadows, tears stinging my eyes, not out of pain this time, but a quiet, aching acceptance. Weeks passed. Then one morning, Sophie showed up at my doorstep. She looked nervous, holding an envelope. "I didn't know who else to give this to," she said. I frowned. "What is it?" "It's about Ethan," she said softly. "He doesn't know I'm giving you this, but you deserve to see it." Inside the envelope were hospital papers. Medical results. Ethan's name. Diagnosis. Cardiac arrhythmia. Stress-induced. My breath caught. Sophie looked down. "He collapsed 2 weeks ago after visiting Emma. Didn't want you to know. He said he couldn't stand to see you worried again." I stared at her, my throat tight. "Why are you telling me?" "Because no matter what happened, he loves you, Clara," she said. "And maybe you still love him too." She left before I could reply. I sat on the floor, the papers in my lap, tears streaming down my face. He was breaking, quietly, while I was busy trying to decide whether to hate him. I drove to the hospital that evening. Ethan was sitting by the window in his room, a thin tube running from his arm. He looked smaller somehow, weaker, human. When he saw me, his eyes widened. "Clara, how did you—" "I know," I said softly, holding up the envelope. "You should have told me." He looked down. "I didn't want your pity." "Then don't get sick," I said through tears. "Don't make me watch you fall apart alone." He laughed bitterly. "You still care." "I never stopped," I whispered. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly. "Clara, I don't deserve you, but I want to be the man who finally does." I took his hand. "Then start with honesty. No more secrets. No more Sophie. No more hiding." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I promise." And this time I believed him. Not because he said it, but because for the first time, he looked like a man who truly meant it. After his recovery, Ethan moved back home. We didn't go back to how things were. We built something new. He visited Emma every weekend. But now, I sometimes join them. Sophie and I, strangely, became civil, even friendly. We weren't enemies anymore. We were two women bound by pain and learning to heal from it. Lily and Emma became inseparable. Watching them together made me realize something. We adults complicate love. Children don't. They forgive without asking. It's been 6 months since that Christmas. The house feels different now. Quieter, but real. Sometimes, when I pass the Christmas tree, I remember that night, the shock, the silence, the truth, and I realize something powerful. Sometimes life breaks us not to destroy us, but to rebuild us into people who finally know what love really means. I look at Ethan now, helping Lily with her homework, smiling through his scars, and I no longer see a liar. I see a man who fell, but chose to stand again. And I'm not the same Clara anymore. I'm stronger, I'm honest, and I'm free, but deep down. I also know something else. The past never really disappears. It just waits quietly for the next chapter to begin. 3 years had passed since that fateful Christmas night that changed everything. 3 years since Ethan came back home. 3 years since I learned that forgiveness doesn't heal wounds. It teaches you how to live with scars. Our life had grown, quieter, not perfect, but peaceful. Lily was 10 now, and Emma, Sophie's daughter, had become like a second child to me. She'd visit on weekends, and the girls would fill the house with laughter that made the walls feel alive again. Even Sophie and I had built something I never thought possible: respect. She had married Daniel a year earlier, and to everyone's surprise, Ethan attended the wedding. Standing there, watching him shake Daniel's hand, I realized something extraordinary. That true closure doesn't happen when you forget the past. It happens when you stop needing revenge. Ethan had changed. He was more grounded now, more present. He still volunteered, still spoke at local support groups about guilt, truth, and rebuilding trust. People admired him. Some even called him an inspiration. I always smiled quietly at that, because I knew the full story behind that inspiration. I had lived it, but peace, I've learned, has a strange way of testing whether you really deserve it. It began on a grey November morning. I was at the school where I worked as a counsellor when I received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was trembling, nervous. "Mrs. Harris, this is Detective Moore. I'm afraid I need to ask you a few questions about your husband." The room suddenly felt cold. "My husband?" I asked, my voice tightening. "What's happened?" "There's been an accident," the detective said. "He's fine, but it involves a woman named Anna Blake." That name meant nothing to me, but by the way he paused, I knew it was about to. At the hospital, I found Ethan sitting in a chair, his hand wrapped in gauze, eyes distant. The accident had been minor, a car collision caused by icy roads. No one was seriously hurt, but the woman in the other car, Anna, was sitting just a few feet away, crying softly into her hands. When Ethan saw me, he stood up instantly. "Clara, it's not what it looks like." The words every woman dreads hearing. I froze. "Then tell me what it is." "She's..." He hesitated, lowering his voice. "She's from the group I volunteer with. She's been struggling." I offered to drive her to a session. The roads were bad. That's all. It sounded believable. Too believable. But as I watched Anna look up, the way her eyes flickered toward him, not with fear, but with something more personal, a familiar ache returned. The ache of doubt. The ghost of betrayal whispering, "It's happening again." That night, after putting Lily to bed, I sat by the fireplace, waiting for him to speak. He finally did. "Clara, I swear to you, it's nothing. She's a widow. She lost her husband last year. I was just trying to help. I wanted to believe him. God knows I did. But the part of me that had been burned once refused to touch the flame again without trembling. Ethan," I said slowly, "I've spent 3 years rebuilding trust. Don't make me question it again." He looked shattered. "Then believe me, please." And I did. At least I tried. But belief, once broken, never comes back pure. Weeks passed. Life went on. Outwardly normal, inwardly uncertain. Ethan still volunteered, still came home on time, still smiled the same. But I started noticing small things. The late-night texts he didn't answer in front of me. The way his voice softened when talking on the phone. The scent of unfamiliar perfume that lingered faintly on his coat once or twice. I told myself it was paranoia. That trauma teaches you to fear peace. But the mind, once betrayed, becomes a detective that never sleeps. Then, one evening as I was preparing dinner, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You should know the truth before he hurts you again." There was a picture attached. Ethan and Anna, outside a cafe, leaning close, smiling. Nothing romantic, nothing inappropriate, but familiar enough to tear through my chest. For a long time, I just stared at it, frozen between disbelief and exhaustion. I didn't want this story to repeat. I didn't want to become the woman who keeps forgiving until she forgets who she is. When Ethan came home that night, I didn't confront him. I just watched him. Watched how easily he moved around the kitchen, how naturally he kissed my forehead, how genuinely he seemed to love me. Maybe that was the scariest part, that both things could be true. Days turned into silence. I stopped asking questions. He stopped volunteering details. Between us grew the same invisible wall that once destroyed us. The difference this time was, I wasn't angry. I was tired. One evening, Sophie called me unexpectedly. Clara, I don't know if this is my place to say, but I saw Ethan and Anna at the community center yesterday. They seemed close. Maybe it's nothing, but I thought you should know. That was it. The confirmation I didn't want but needed. When Ethan returned home, I asked just one question. Do you love her? He blinked, stunned. What? Anna, do you love her? He shook his head immediately. No. Clara, please. She's just someone I'm helping. Then why does she look at you like you're the only person keeping her alive? He fell silent. His hands trembled slightly as he said, because maybe, in a way, I was. That silence between us, that crushing, heavy silence, was the same one from years ago. The silence that destroys more than shouting ever could. For days I avoided him. I slept in the guest room. I told Lily her dad was working late. He tried to talk, but I wasn't ready. I couldn't be the woman who stitched the same wound twice. Then, one night, I received another message, this time from Anna herself. Please don't hate Ethan. He was only trying to help. I'm sorry if I caused pain. I never meant to come between you two. He talks about you all the time. Says you saved his life. Something inside me cracked. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't betrayal. Maybe it was something else. Compassion misinterpreted. Guilt disguised as care. But it didn't matter. Because trust doesn't die only when someone lies. It dies when you start questioning their truth. A week later, Ethan left for a 3-day trip with the group. Something he had planned long before. I told him to go. I needed the space as much as he did. During those days, I went through old photos, letters, memories, everything we'd built. I realized that forgiveness for me had become a habit. I forgave him not because he deserved it, but because I was afraid of the emptiness that would follow if I didn't. When he came back, we sat at the kitchen table, the same way we had the first night after his affair with Sophie came to light. Ethan, I said quietly, I'm not angry. I'm not even hurt. I'm just done being the one who holds everything together. He stared at me, his eyes glassy. Are you leaving me? I shook my head. No, I'm just letting go of the version of us that keeps breaking. If you love her, go. If you don't, then stay. But this time, stay as someone who's already forgiven himself. Tears rolled down his face. I don't love her, Clara. I love you, but I don't know how to stop trying to fix other people. When I still feel broken myself, I reached out, touched his hand gently. Then fix that first. Months passed. Anna moved away. Ethan stayed, but not as the man who needed saving. He went back to therapy, faced the parts of himself he'd spent years burying, under guilt and good intentions. I focused on my work, my daughter, my peace. And one day, something beautiful happened. Silence returned to our home. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't fearful. It was peaceful. One evening, sitting by the same window where our story began, Ethan said softly, You know, Clara, sometimes I think life keeps testing us until we learn the difference between forgiveness and permission. I smiled faintly. And which one do you think this was? He looked at me, a small tear glistening. Forgiveness. Because this time you didn't just forgive me, you let me face myself. Now, years later, when I look back, I no longer see betrayal and pain. I see a woman who chose peace over bitterness. Man who learned that redemption isn't about being loved again. It's about becoming someone worthy of love and 2 children who grew up watching broken adults heal in front of them, learning that love isn't perfect, but it's real. Maybe that's what forgiveness costs. Not your pride, not your strength, but the version of you that once believed love could exist without pain, and somehow, it's worth it. 10 years later, the house felt quieter these days. Not empty, just softer. The laughter of children had turned into the gentle hum of teenagers' music from behind closed doors. The walls that once echoed with crying and chaos now held the calm of 2 people who had finally made peace with their past. Clara sat by the window that had once witnessed everything. The heartbreak, the forgiveness, the silent nights. Her hair had streaks of silver now, but her eyes, they still carried that same quiet fire. Outside, autumn leaves danced across the lawn. Inside, a pot of coffee simmered on the stove, and the faint sound of Lily's laughter drifted down the hallway. At 16, Lily had grown into a mirror of her mother, kind, observant, and brave in the quietest ways. Emma, now 19, was away at university. She called often, though Clara sensed something changing in her tone lately. Something distant, unsure. Ethan entered the room, older now, a little slower in his steps. The lines on his face told stories no one else could see. Stories of guilt, redemption, and time. He placed a hand on Clara's shoulder and smiled softly. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," she replied. "Dreams again." "The same ones?" She nodded. "The night you came back. Sometimes I still see it, not the pain, just the silence after it." Ethan sat beside her. "You ever regret it, letting me come back?" Clara looked at him. This man who had once broken her heart and then spent a decade mending it piece by piece. "No," she said quietly, "but I regret how long it took me to forgive myself for forgiving you." He smiled faintly. "You always were harder on yourself than anyone else." They sat there, watching the world wake outside their window. The same window that had witnessed everything they'd lost, and everything they'd rebuilt. Peace, they had learned, isn't loud. It's not fireworks or dramatic reconciliations. It's morning coffee shared in silence. It's knowing you survived the storm and still chose to stay. Later that week, Emma came home for a visit. She had grown taller, sharper. A young woman with her mother's eyes and her father's thoughtful silence. Sophie's shadow had faded, but her memory still lingered in small ways. A photograph in Emma's room, a song she loved, the perfume she used to wear. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Emma asked something unexpected. "Clara," she said softly, "can I ask you something about my mom?" Clara hesitated, glancing at Ethan. "Of course." Emma's voice trembled a little. "Did she ever forgive you for, everything that happened between you and Dad?" Ethan froze, his breath catching. Clara answered for him. "Yes," she said quietly. "She did. Maybe not right away, but in her own way, she made peace." Emma stared into the flames. "Because I found something in her old things. A letter. It was addressed to you." Clara's heart skipped. "To me?" Emma nodded and reached into her bag. She handed over an envelope. Yellowed. Edges frayed with age. The handwriting was delicate, familiar. Sophie's. Clara's fingers trembled as she opened it. "Clara, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here to say these words myself. There was a time I hated you. Not because you took something from me, but because you showed me the kind of woman I could never be. You had strength where I had fear. You had faith when I had doubt. When Ethan came back to you, I was angry. But with time, the diagnosis came quietly, delivered by a doctor with tired eyes, a lung condition. Chronic, irreversible, but manageable. Not fatal, they said, if treated carefully. But Clara saw the truth in Ethan's face. He knew this was the beginning of a different kind of ending. In the days that followed, their home filled again with silence. Not the painful kind this time, but a tender, fragile one. The silence of realization that life doesn't wait for you to be ready. Ethan began writing every day for hours. Letters, notes, small reflections. Clara didn't ask what he wrote. She just watched. Maybe he was leaving pieces of himself behind. Not out of fear of dying, but as a way to keep living. One evening he handed her a small notebook. "It's for you," he said simply. She opened it and found the first line. "For the woman who taught me that forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It teaches us how to live with it." She looked up at him, tears shining. "You're not going anywhere," she whispered. He smiled softly. "We're all going somewhere, Clara. But I'm glad my journey led me back here, to you." Winter melted into spring again. The house filled once more with laughter. Quieter, older, but real. The girls grew, the seasons turned, and the couple who had once been broken now lived in the kind of peace people spend lifetimes chasing. Sometimes, at night, Clara would sit by the window, the same one that had watched 1,000 moments. Heartbreak, forgiveness, healing, and think, maybe this is what love really means. Not staying because it's easy, but staying because you've already seen the worst, and still choose to hold the other's hand. And in that choice, in that daily, fragile human choice, she found her faith again. Spring had returned to the town again. The air was warmer, the birds louder. Yet inside the house, everything felt fragile, like time itself was holding its breath. Ethan had grown thinner. His cough, once occasional, had become constant. He still smiled, still made jokes, still walked through the garden every morning, touching each flower as though memorizing it. But Clara knew, she always knew. One afternoon, as she changed the sheets, she found another envelope beneath his pillow. Her heart trembled. It was addressed to her. Again, in Ethan's shaky handwriting. She didn't open it right away. She sat there for a long time, holding it between her hands, feeling the weight of 10 years of love, guilt, forgiveness, all wrapped in one piece of paper. Finally, she unfolded it. "Clara, I've spent a lifetime running from the man I once was. You were the only one who ever waited long enough for me to stop running. I don't know how much time I have left, but I do know this. I loved you in every version of myself. The broken, the weak, the redeemed. And if love means anything, it means coming home. You were my home. Tell the girls that love isn't perfect. It's not about promises. It's about choosing the same person, even when the world gives you every reason not to. If I don't wake tomorrow, know this, I didn't die with regret. I died finally understanding what forgiveness feels like." Ethan, the letter slipped from Clara's trembling hands. Her chest felt heavy, not with fear, but with the unbearable truth that she had already been preparing for this moment for months. She didn't cry that night. She just sat beside him, holding his hand until the sun began to rise. And when the light touched his face, she whispered the same words he once said to her. "Don't be afraid. You're already home." By morning, Ethan was gone. The funeral was small, just family, close friends, and a quiet kind of grief that didn't need to be spoken aloud. Emma stood beside Clara, holding Lily's hand. Everyone who came spoke about Ethan's kindness, his humor, his resilience, but only Clara knew the full story. Only she knew the man who had broken and rebuilt himself for love. After everyone left, she sat by the grave alone. A small notebook rested in her lap. The same one Ethan used to write in during his last months. She opened it. Inside were dozens of letters. None of them sent. Each one was addressed to someone he'd hurt, loved, or remembered. To Sophie, I never stopped thinking of you as part of us. You taught me how fragile we all are, and how love doesn't always mean forever. I hope you found peace where I couldn't. To Emma, you remind me so much of both your mothers. Strong, beautiful, and kind. Be gentle with your heart, but don't ever stop believing in love. To Lily, you're my second chance at life. Every laugh of yours healed something in me. And finally, to Clara, I never finish saying thank you. For staying, for believing that even the worst of us can change, for loving me when I couldn't love myself. By the time she reached the last page, tears had blurred the ink. Clara closed the notebook, pressed it to her chest, and whispered, "You did love me. You always did." Years passed. Emma graduated. Lily grew up. The house changed, the furniture replaced, the garden overgrown. But the window remained, the same window that had witnessed everything. One evening, as rain poured outside, Emma found her mother sitting there again, holding the same notebook. "Mom," she said softly, "you still read those letters?" Clara smiled faintly. "Sometimes." When I missed the sound of his voice, Emma sat beside her. "Do you ever wish you could have changed anything?" Clara shook her head. "No, because everything, the pain, the betrayal, the forgiveness, it all brought us here. And here is peaceful." They watched the rain fall, steady, cleansing, endless. After a long silence, Emma spoke again. "You know, I found one more letter," she said quietly. Clara turned. "What do you mean?" Emma reached into her pocket and handed over a small sealed envelope. It was hidden behind Dad's photo in the attic. "It's addressed to me." Clara smiled softly. "Then read it." Emma opened it carefully. The handwriting was faint, but familiar. "Emma, if you're reading this, I hope you're older, wiser, and happy. There's one thing I need you to know about love. It isn't about who stays the longest. It's about who comes back when everything is broken. That's what your mother did for me. And if you ever find someone worth fighting for, don't be afraid to forgive, because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing love over pain. Always, Dad." Emma folded the letter, tears falling silently. Clara reached out and took her hand. "See," she whispered. "He's still teaching us." Years later, when Clara herself grew old and grey, the girls often found her sitting by the window. The same window that had seen it all. Sometimes she'd be smiling softly to herself, whispering something only she could hear. When she passed away, Emma found one final letter tucked inside her mother's diary. It read, "Ethan, you were right. Forgiveness does teach us how to live. And now, maybe it's time I finally rest, knowing that we did the best we could. Tell Sophie I kept my promise. I took care of them all. I'll see you soon. Clara." At the very end, Emma stood by both graves, her father's and her stepmother's, side by side beneath the oak tree. She placed the two notebooks between them and whispered through tears, "Your love wasn't perfect, but it was real." As she turned to leave, the wind picked up, soft, warm, almost like a sigh, and for a moment, she could have sworn she heard two voices, fading into the breeze. "We found our way home." The end.